Chapter 3. Miss Napier. I love watching the students arrive each morning. First, the buses roar around the circular drive. One by one, the doors open and pour out the kids, lively, happy, chatty, and full of enthusiasm for another day. They're too loud, my colleagues argue. They're not very polite. Some arrive already spouting excuses about phantom doctor's appointments and homework assignments eaten by the dog. Those are teachers' quibbles, but when you're a guidance counselor, you thrive on the pure energy they bring to everything. I always make sure I'm at the top of the stairs to welcome them the moment they burst into the building. I spot him instantly. Dexter Foreman, the new boy. I don't recognize him. We've never met before, and he has no file here at Wolf's Eye. But he stands out just the same. He's the dead spot in the swirl of activity, buffeted from body to body like a silver ball caught between the bumpers of a pinball machine. His clothes are a misfit, too, giving him the look of a time traveler from the 1950s. His brush cut is definitely a home job. He's rubbernecking as if he's never seen a school before. It's entirely possible that he hasn't. The truancy officer claims Dexter has lived most of his life in a retirement village. As the flow of kids begins up the stairs, Dexter suddenly winks out to reappear a few seconds later toward the back of the swarm. I know exactly what happened. He must have hit the missing stair that everyone else is experienced enough to avoid. Wolf's Eye Middle School is full of little problems like that. The legacy of a 105-year-old building without a major facelift in all that time. The board and City Hall have been wrangling over repairs and improvements for decades, and no one wants to sink money into renovations in case the town decides to tear the whole place down and build a new school. The faculty and students have gotten pretty good at watching our step, but for a newcomer like Dexter, the place is going to seem like it's full of booby traps. I position myself at the top of the flight and greet him when he finally gets there. Good morning, Dexter. I'm Miss Napier, your guidance counselor. Welcome to Wolf's Eye. Good to meet you, he says, shaking my hand and looking me in the eye in a very adult way. The stairs are broken, he adds in a serious tone. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. I lead him away from the staircase and into my first-floor office. He lingers at a dark spot on the wall, tapping the plaster with one knuckle. Water damage, he announces in a sober tone. Have a seat, I invite. We just have some business to take care of before we get you settled in. I don't need to be here, you know, he tells me. I was getting a great education at the Pines. You're gonna love it, I assure him. There are so many other kids your own age. Think of the friends you'll make. Age has nothing to do with it. My best friend is 99. His file states that Dexter lives with his grandmother, Adele Foreman, who's 76. But of course there are residents at the Pines who are much older than that. Who am I to say the boy doesn't have a 99-year-old friend? But it doesn't change the fact that middle school is where a 12-year-old belongs. Here's your schedule, I say, pushing the printout across my desk. He examines it, brow furrowing. What do all these numbers mean? They're room numbers. I hesitate. How much explaining do I have to do? If Dexter has never been to a school before, he might know very little about how a building like ours operates. Every class takes place in a different room, and when the period is over, you move on to the next one on your schedule. He regards me sharply. I'm not stupid, you know. I take math with Leo in Unit Flamingo 14. After that, I go to Phyllis, not to her condo, he puts in quickly. She has a yappy parakeet, so we do English class in the pool house, where the lighting is better for reading. Then, for social studies, I cut him off with a smile. You know what? Let's take a tour and I'll show you how the rooms are laid out. As we leave the office, Dexter pauses over the coffee service on my mini-fridge, then reaches down and plucks out 2 packets of Sweet and Low. Dexter! He turns, the pink packets still in his hand, his face a picture of innocence. If he's aware that he's just stolen something from me, he obviously has no idea there's anything wrong with that. Yeah? I think of my mother's Aunt Corinne, age 88, who lives at the Pines, the same seniors community where Dexter was raised. Never once have I seen her in a restaurant where she wasn't helping herself to sugar or ketchup or some condiment at the table. If anyone calls her on it, she replies, "We're paying customers. We're entitled." Nothing, I mumble. Follow me, please. I lead him through the halls, explaining our room numbering system. He listens carefully, scribbling on a ring-bound pad. I'm willing to bet there isn't another kid in the school who wouldn't use a phone to take notes like that, but Dexter isn't your average kid. He has a phone, the old-fashioned flip kind, in a holder strapped to his belt. I haven't seen one of those in years. The more I try to explain the room numbers, the more complicated it gets, even to me. For example, the first-floor rooms are all in the 200s, the second-floor rooms are in the 300s, and the basement rooms all start with the letters A, B, or C. When he asks why, I have to confess that I don't know. Also, storerooms seem to follow another numbering system completely, always ending in 55. 155, 255, clear through to 855. The music room, science lab, and nurse's office have no numbers at all. Every bathroom, boys and girls, is marked 3. Have I mentioned it's a very old building? Parts of the basement have been shut off since the Second World War. Eventually, I give up trying to defend the numbering and take Dexter through his daily schedule, starting with homeroom. I already have a homeroom, he says wistfully, at home. I hope he can relax that attitude long enough to make friends and enjoy his middle school experience. As his timetable brings us around the building, he takes pages of notes while we walk. We finish at his 9th period class, social studies, and he stands outside room 323, head cocked, listening. An intermittent knocking sound is coming from inside the room. Hear that? Well, this is your last class of the day, I explain, so you won't have to worry about it until 2:15. Shh! He holds a finger and then presses his ear to the door. We shouldn't disturb them. As if I hadn't even spoken, Dexter throws the door open and barges into the room, interrupting the class without so much as a "Pardon me." The teacher, Mr. Lamb, stands at the smartboard, a pointer frozen in his hand. Can I help you? I rush in after Dexter. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Lamb. We'll get out of your hair. But Dexter is stalking around the perimeter of the room, listening intently. At last, he drops to his knees in front of a radiator. Here's the problem. Sure enough, the knocking sound is coming from that very spot. It always does that, Jackson Sharp comments from the 3rd row. Dexter rummages around in his pocket, comes out with a handful of coins, and selects a quarter. He fists the coin into the groove on the valve and the valve of the radiator and begins to loosen it. There's a hissing noise and steam begins to issue from the valve. It hangs in the air like a fog, blurring the smartboard. Mr. Lamb is becoming annoyed. What are you doing, and why are you doing it now? Dexter refastens the valve, stands up, and repockets his quarter. If it starts to knock again, you just have to bleed off a little more steam. He informs the teacher. It shouldn't bother you anymore. No charge, he adds, monoginously. That's what Leo always says. The teacher is bug-eyed. Who's Leo? Leo Preminger, my best friend, Dexter explains. It's his trademark line. And he heads out of the room. With an apologetic look in Mr. Lamb's direction, I follow. As I leave, I can't help picking up on a few comments from the students. Who was that kid? What a weirdo. He was on my bus this morning. What's up with that outfit? For me, it's a red flag. As a counselor, I'm the last line of defense between my students and bullying. And any kid as flat out different as Dexter might as well have a bullseye painted on his cardigan. Once in the hall, I round on him. I understand you're new, but one important rule here is you never, ever interrupt the class. He's mystified. I didn't interrupt them. The radiator was interrupting them. I made it better. Before Aunt Corinne moved to the Pines, she lived with her husband, Uncle Louis. He died when I was in high school, but I remember him as the handiest person on earth. My whole life, whenever something broke, Uncle Louis was called upon to repair it, and he always delivered. No matter how big the problem, he would manage to reach into his pocket and come up with exactly the right fix. He was the kind of person who could stop a knocking radiator using nothing more than a quarter. Aunt Corinne says they don't make men like Uncle Louis anymore, but looking at 12-year-old Dexter Foreman makes you wonder.